Welcome to Parenting How Not to Suck. I'm your host, Natalie McCabe, and I'm so glad you're here. Because you're here, you already know you do not suck. You're here to gain some valuable insights from some parent coaches. This is early in this channel, and I really wanted to promote the value of parent coaching and help people understand what we do. So I have one of the many coaches here. Sharyn is perfect to help me do this today. I'm so happy to have with me Sharyn Feldman. She brings both personal and professional experience to her work with families. As a single mother, she raised 3 children who are now thriving adults, giving her a deep understanding of the challenges and joys of parenting. Me too, sis. Her journey has also been shaped by overcoming the impact of her own challenging childhood, which fueled her passion for helping others heal and grow. At age 54, Sharyn fulfilled a long-held dream by earning her master's in counseling psychology, proving that it's never too late to pursue meaningful goals. These experiences have instilled in her resilience, empathy, and a profound appreciation for the importance of connection. Combining her rich life experience with academic training, Sharyn is dedicated to supporting parents and children in finding greater understanding, harmony, and emotional well-being. Welcome. So glad to have you, Ms. Sharyn.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I'm so honored to be here.
It just shows what is possible. I really, let's talk to those single mothers out there that think, oh, I'm never going to get through this, right?
Yeah. My heart is in it for all the single parents, not just moms, but dads
That's
who are
true.
also doing it on their own. And it takes the work and makes it exponentially complicated. But my heart is with all of those people. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think both of our examples, we can show that you can get through it and you can still accomplish your goals and still be resilient. And that shows your children, right?
Absolutely. We're
What
always
is
an
possible.
example. That's it.
Yeah. So
Amazing.
you have your master's in counseling psychology, but you're also a parent coach. So tell us that story about how did that happen?
Yeah. Interestingly, I started off my career in education, actually, and I was really interested in specifically the early years, and probably because my older sister was a kindergarten teacher, and I really looked up to her, and I found her work interesting. And so I went the education route, but not the traditional teacher route. I ended up in private school settings, being hired to assist in the special ed department and be behavioral support for some of the children who were slightly more challenging in the system. And so I worked as support to the child, but also started to see where the parents needed that support as well. And from there, I moved into regional and municipal programming for young families and parents, and then launched a business kind of teaching parents how to play with their toddlers. So I did that business for many years. And as I was working on that, I really wanted to be helping parents understand their toddlers and their children. And because I came from the education setting, I understood right away that people who are in education get that training to understand child development, but parents don't get that training.
They don't.
And so parents walk around with misconceptions about what their child's behavior means, what's on-track behavior, what's off-track behavior. And so the struggle was really so interesting to me, and I really loved inserting myself to be a translator for parents to help them understand their child's behavior. So from there, I actually moved into social services, and that's where that career took me. So the last 7-8 years, I was working for social services, running a parenting center, a regional parenting center, and supporting all these young families. And through that work, I also supported the workers in child welfare and child protection. So I did in-home intervention to support families. And just this idea of what parents need grew in me.
Yes.
And I ended up going to get my master's in counseling psychology so that I'm now a registered psychotherapist. But really, all of that work turned me into an eternal researcher and someone who just developed a very deep understanding of attachment and neuroscience and how to marry all the things around parent-child interaction to help families have more harmony and more ease in their day-to-day living. And so I package up all of my career and my trainings and my experiences into a parent coaching business.
Yes. And it's so important because there's those little pieces that about attachment and especially the brain science that I don't think those pieces are talked about enough.
Yeah.
And because the parents are just inundated with this information now between all the social media platforms, and there's just so much information out there for parents. Like, how do they even wade through it? But small little tidbits of information that they're missing could help.
Absolutely. And
But
they typically, sorry,
yeah, no, go ahead.
they don't
Go
know
ahead.
where to go, right?
Yeah.
So there's, like you said, the social media, online, the world is now saturated. We're just saturated with information. And parents are searching for answers or trying to take their questions places, but they really don't know where to turn. And that's, I think, is one of the biggest problems we're having currently is parents just not understanding what's available to them.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So that leads perfectly into my next question. I think parent coaching is relatively new. I know in my end of the world in Canada, people were looking at me like, what are you doing? What? I understand what a life coach is. I understand what a but what are super nanny going to come into my house, tell me everything that I'm doing wrong, right? Is the feeling I was getting as I'm telling people this is what I'm doing now. But like you said, when you see in the schools, when you're working with special needs kids, these parents really could use some support and individual support. Like
Yeah.
following somebody on Instagram isn't really supporting your family. And every situation is every child's unique, as we know, and every parent's unique, and every family's values are unique, which we'll talk about after. But I feel like, and I've talked to other coaches from all across the world, from India even, and they've said this same thing. Many parents are hesitant to reach out to look for parent coaching because they feel this, I should know how to do this. And no, that's the message I want to say. You shouldn't know how to do this. I had 30 years in education or 10 years of teaching when I had my kids. I didn't know what I was doing and tried to
Right.
read all the books, right?
Yeah. So what's interesting that you just touched on is the fact that when we have families where they have children or a child with any kind of exceptionality, any non-typically developing child, whether that's neurologically or whether it's physical, those parents seem to get and they're given the messaging that there's support out there. So there might be social service support or other organizations, or their pediatrician will send them for other kinds of supports because they have not typically developing children, right?
Yeah.
But then for the family who just has typically developing children, who don't have any kind of diagnosis, they don't have any kind of special need. For some reason, the messaging that those parents get is, as you
Yeah.
said, that they don't need any support.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're left to struggle. They're left to go online and post questions to random people, to
Yeah.
read things and try to duct tape together the answers to the questions they have because they're deemed as sufficient. And so they just be able to figure this out on their own.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is I say that parent coaching is very similar to going out and getting a personal trainer, right? So if I'm going to go to the gym and I know that I'm pretty sure I need to do some cardio. I'm pretty sure I need to work on my core. I've been told that I should be doing weight training. And so I could go and I could do those things. I could look online. I can read all kinds of things and say, okay, I'm going to go and do it. And maybe I'll have some results, but maybe I won't have any results.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very different than what I know to be true about personal trainers. I have 100% faith that if I decided to get fit and get healthy and I hired a personal trainer, what they would do is they would meet me where I am. They would explore with me my goals, my history, my current lifestyle, and they would help map out a plan for me to reach the goals, and they would walk alongside me on my path towards those goals.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is exactly the same as the work that I do with parents. I meet them where they're at, find out what are the goals for your family? What would you like to see happen in your family?
Yes.
And I walk alongside them and I help them transform their family experience, both for themselves and for the other members in their household.
Yes. Yes. And that is exactly what parent coaching is meant to be.
Yeah.
And yes, you can go do it on your own. But if you think at the gym you start lifting those weights and you lift them wrong, end up with an injury.
Yeah.
I literally did when my kids were in adolescence, and I hired them personal trainers when they wanted to start going to the gym. I was like, I don't want you to injure yourself at this young age. Go get some training about how to lift these weights properly. And so there should be no shame in that. If you want
Right.
the best for your family, we're in this job of parenting for how many years? It's never ending. And so, do you want it to be enjoyable? Do you want it to be in line with your values? Do you want to feel confident that you're doing what's best for your family? You're right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I think I really want to shout that out with this little mini show that's just brand new. To really highlight that, to take that away from parents, that worry of I should know. You shouldn't know.
Right.
Is this not the easiest job in the world? It is the most rewarding, but it's not the easiest for sure, right?
So that's interesting. It's
Yeah.
interesting that you just brought that up, that idea of it being a job, because I have something that happens to me when I hear that. And I hear people talk about parenting as a job and they say, oh, it's the
Yeah.
hardest job that, you could ever do. And it's the most
Yeah.
important job you could ever do. And I'm not saying that it isn't important or the most important. And I'm not suggesting that it isn't hard. But when we call it a job, so one of the pillars of the work that I do is about language being powerful. And so the language that we use, both inside our heads and in our minds, and the language that we use as we express ourselves, has the power to shape our experience and the experience for
Absolutely.
other people.
I
So
agree.
when we call parenting a job, there can be resistance to that because a lot of people see a job as having to do with sacrifice and hardship and struggle and perhaps more work than reward. So we have a lot of imagery and a lot of beliefs and thoughts around the idea of a job rather than seeing it as a job. And again, I'm not saying there isn't work. So there is work involved in parenting that it can be parallel to a job, let's say, because of course there's time management involved in parenting and there's financial management that's involved, right? And there's project management. All of those things can be applied to some of the work that is involved in being a parent. But what parenting is a practice. And the reason why parenting is a practice is because it is about the relationship between you and your child. And it is about you showing up from a place of understanding what you stand for, what your values are, what your virtues are, and then practicing those things. So when we think about people who do yoga, people will talk about yoga as I practice yoga, right?
That's
I
right.
practice it. They're going to go onto the mat and they talk about that intentionality of showing up and showing up on the mat, being intentional and showing up in the best way possible. But there's also this idea of the iterative mindset where every time you show up on that mat, you are a new iteration of yourself and you're taking what you've learned before and you're applying it today and you're showing up as your best self. And that is the exact analogy and that's the exact vision that I use for parenting, that it's not about perfection, it's about reflection. And so that's how we show up every day in the practice of parenting and using that as a guide to how you respond to your child.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that because we are practicing. We don't know the stages and ages of our children as well, right? So it's a constant, they say the only thing constant in life is change.
Yeah.
So I love that. I'll stop using the word job, Sharyn. I really will.
Well, just think about it. When I work
it
with
makes
parents,
so much sense.
the first invitation I always give is just start to be aware, right? Start to be
Yeah.
aware of how you approach whatever it is. So let's just say in this, and for those who are listening today, start to think about that. Start to notice what kind of language do you apply to your life in general, but especially in parenting. What are the words that you're using to describe parenting? What are the words you're using to describe your day? And think about the impact those words have. So the first step is always awareness.
Absolutely.
Mindfulness is another pillar of the work that I do. So just tuning in to say, wow, that is how I talk to myself about parenting, right? I am feeling, and those words are attached to how we feel. So noticing the emotions that we bring into our parenting is part of what's going to help you work towards transforming things.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's comes to our next question. You have a book called Parenting is a Practice.
Yeah. I've been
So-
working on this book. Yes, I'm really on a mission to change the way everybody approaches their parenting. I'm still working on the book. Hopefully in the fall, it'll be ready to launch. But yes,
Awesome.
the book is currently titled Parenting as a Practice. And I'm really trying to shout that from the rooftops just to get
Yeah.
everybody to approach this. And it really is going to lend itself to parents who are working against that perfectionist mindset,
Yeah.
understanding that relationships are about connection and rupture and repair, what the repair looks like, what connection looks like.
Mhm.
All of those things are going to inform their mindset around parenting. And as soon as the mindset shifts in parenting, some of those behaviors that you see in the household and in the family, those start to change as well.
Absolutely. They do. They're all connected, right? Because a family is a living system, and the parents are modeling these things, and the repair piece is so huge because we're all going to mess up. We're all going to make mistakes. And that's
Yeah.
why I love practice, right? It's
Yeah.
your practice. So you reflect, how did today go? What do I want to do better? And then all based on, and this is where it gets super individual, right?
Yes.
It's based on that family's values.
Yes.
Everybody on the planet doesn't have the same ones, and
No.
that's okay. And we as coaches, and I know you are as well, we're not here to judge what you value. We're to help you to tease out what you value. So you
Yeah.
do some really cool work around that, Sharyn. So let's tell people that are listening.
Yeah. So I love this because parents are always walking around with this question of, I don't know what to do in this circumstance.
Mhm.
I don't know what to answer my child. Or I'll have parents who will call me. I have like a back pocket system with the parents I work with where they can call me in a bind when I say you're
Yeah.
in the trenches and you need to like really flesh something out. And they're like, I don't know what to do. My child did this, I did this, and I'm not sure what the right answer is. And there is no right answer, as you
There
said.
isn't.
It's universal. It's not universal. And really the idea of getting really solid and crystal clear on your values and what matters to you and what are the foundational pieces that you stand for and that your family then stands for. And so many parents don't stop to think about this. So again, it comes back to that
Yeah.
having a guide, having a mentor, having a
Mhm.
coach who's going to help you with the mindset. So I do a workshop. I try to do it twice a year with parents. It's a local workshop. I haven't brought it online yet, but it is something I'm working on. Where parents get together, we get together for 3 hours, and they literally work on a vision board that is about their values for whether it's that year or that quarter or that season. I've done it seasonally. How do you see
Yeah.
this winter going? And it's a lot of journaling. So we do a lot of journaling when it's an in-person program. The parents are paired with another person. They have prompts and questions to talk about with one another, and they get super clear. And it's a long list of values and virtues. And when we talk about values and virtues, I mean, it's a long list. I would encourage anyone who's listening to go to the Virtues Project, which is a program that was based out of British Columbia, actually. And I'm also in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the Canadians. So the Virtues Project, because they have a beautiful, actually, deck of cards, which I use in my program. So it's a deck of
Mhm.
cards where on one side it has, they call them virtues, and virtues and values are different, but I use them interchangeably. On one side, it actually describes it. And then on the other side, it gives you how to put that into practice.
How you would see that in the world. I think, have they been
Beautiful.
around for a while, Sharyn?
A long time. Yeah.
Okay, I think I used them in my grade 4 classroom
And-
back in, I don't know, 2000, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the number.
Yeah. And they're still available. And they even have them in an app
Oh.
form, which is fantastic. So you can just look it up.
Okay, Sharyn, they're going in the link in the description. We'll
Yes.
do that. Yeah.
And the robust conversation that happens in these rooms where I have 15 to 20 parents where they'll talk about, and I ask them to come up with their top 5, and they can
Yep.
change. They're going to change over the stages of your family. They're going to change. They might
Yes.
change. They're not written in stone, but you
No.
have to have a guide, an internal guide for you that tells you how you're going to manage situations in your family and why that matters,
Yes.
right? Why does it matter? So parents get super clear on what those values are, how they see them, and then they can look at their lives and say, if this matters to me, why am I doing that? They can see where there's
Yes.
some discrepancy, right?
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example, right? How this is not universal. So if one of the values or virtues might be health, right? Health and wellness.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty simple exchange that I might have. I have it probably with every client that I work with where a parent will bring up something about food, or a child wants a cookie before dinner, and it's the most basic example, and the parents know you're going to ruin your appetite. But really, that might be I'm the boss, and so I'm saying no, versus why am I saying no to this? Or why am I saying no to dessert or another snack? And if when you've worked on yourself and your values and you know that health matters to you, so
Yeah.
health is a value we have in our family. And so that's not, we're not going to get another cotton candy
Yeah.
because health is something that we value. So when you start to use that language with yourself, with your partner, with your children,
Yes.
then it's the values that are the guide. And this is the struggle that parents have. They feel like it's arbitrary. I just have to decide, am I letting them stay up? Am I not letting them stay up? I don't know. Am I saying yes to it? Am I saying no? What foundation do I have to say those things and to make a decision? So this affords parents so much ease, because once they start to operate from this place, things start to click and make sense. And they come back to me and they say, oh, Sharyn, it was so easy to make that decision. It was so easy to answer my child in this way because I knew what the value was. Now, to make it so that it's to have everybody understand how it's not universal, right? You can decide that health is one of your top 3 values, and I can decide that health is one of my top 3. But what does that look like in your life? And what does it look like in my life? I can work with somebody who health is important. And to them, what that means is they want to maintain a certain weight. And so if that's the focal point, then they're going to be using that when they go shopping and when they meal plan. And they're going to be thinking about things like calories and maybe exercise, because that's typically what people think about when they think about their weight. Somebody else who feels that health is an important value might be concerned with developing muscles. And so when they go to meal plan and shop, they're going to be looking at the protein. How much protein am I taking in a day? Because we need protein to develop our muscles. Somebody else who maybe has a history of diabetes in their family, and they're concerned about diabetes, when they think about their groceries and their shopping and their health, they're going to be looking at blood sugar levels and glucose spikes. And so they're going to meal plan around that. Someone like me, whose family has a history of dementia and Alzheimer's, I'm concerned about health, but my focal point is brain boosting foods. So I make sure that every day I have blueberries and almonds and fatty fish. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's going to be
still looks different. Same value, still looking different, right?
So it's not enough to just say, oh, I heard this podcast and someone said I need to know my values. But no, it would be much more intense than that. Because if you're working with a coach like myself, I'm going to want to understand, what does health look like to you? And why does that matter to you? And then we can build in some of those ways that's going to show up in your parenting.
Exactly. And when the parent knows that, like you say, it just makes it so much easier to make decisions and to feel that sense of confidence. Okay, I really value nutrition with my kids. And then even speaking with the children when they're old enough. In our family, we value nutritious foods. It's not that we never have a treat, or a sugary snack, but we value nutrition. And then the kids will pick up that language. And
my kids knew early on, they knew about proteins, carbs. We would talk about that, right? When you're making a meal, that we would talk, what kind of protein do we want tonight for dinner? And they were little, because language is language. People decide that, oh, that's a high vocabulary word that a 4-year-old shouldn't necessarily.
They're so smart.
My 4-year-old was saying, instead of saying, go find a garbage can, he's like, where's the receptacle? And I really wanted him to know that word. And people would look at him and be like, who taught you that word? But kids are going to normalize everything you do with them. So if you talk about proteins and carbs and sugars and fruits and vegetables, and just talk to them about all the things that are important. If nutrition is important, you have to build it into the way that you talk to your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And figuring out what's important is about doing those values and virtues. And I can't wait to get those cards again. They were so amazing. They didn't belong to me. They were in the school I was working in. I couldn't steal them, but I would have. And I'm so amazed that they're still out there, because I won't, again, not mentioning any dates, but I loved them, using them with the students as well, because values are something that we talked about this in our pre-record. For some people, they're intangible, right? It's, I value kindness and I value my friends, But
Yeah.
really getting specific and what do you value in your family just it gives you that. I had another coach say it's your lighthouse, right? It
Yeah.
gives you that light to know that in the dark times, I know my values are this and this at this season in my life.
Right.
They're not static, nothing is.
Right.
But to help you make that decision, it's so much easier.
And oh,
Go ahead.
absolutely. Yeah. And one of the starting points that I use with parents that are working with me is I ask them at the end of your parenting, because you're not raising a child, you're raising an adult.
Yeah.
You're raising a full-grown adult who you want to be effective and functional as a member of society. So at the end of your parenting, describe your child to me. Describe your now grown child, right?
Yeah.
Describe the adult that you have parented. If you have successfully parented this child into a full-grown adult, what are they like? Describe their qualities.
Yeah.
And that is something tangible that parents can think about. And they often say that I want them to be kind. I want them to be thoughtful. And they list off all the things they want their adult child to be at the end of their parenting career. And then we reverse engineer that. And we say, let's look in your life, in your day-to-day. How are you showing up in a way that is paving the road for that? Yeah. And how are you perhaps doing things that are in contradiction? And so we work on, like you say, a lighthouse, right? Like this, I call it long-range parenting, right? But parenting is a long game.
Yeah.
That it is not about compliance today.
No.
It is about building an adult and what that adult is going to be like.
Yes, absolutely. And we want to work ourselves out of a job, right?
Yeah, that again,
as
the
coaches
job.
and parents. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
But
but that's why it's not a job, right?
Yeah.
You see that? Because that relationship is ongoing, right? My kids are 30, 27, and 22.
Yeah.
And the relationship evolves and changes. I've evolved and changed. I'm not the same person I was when I started as a parent 30 years ago.
Same.
But that relationship evolves and your relationship with your kids evolve. And they still call me for things. They're still looking for that wisdom. But our relationship changes. And that's why it's not a job, right? That's the other reason, because you're always a parent till the end of your life, right?
You're always connected. You always will love them more than life itself, right? That's the bond that we have, right? And I love it. I love it. So parents, when they're new parents, let's talk about the new parents for a minute, because there's, again, like we said, there's so much information out there, but I think it's misplaced, or new parents are sold a story to make sure you get all this stuff. Make sure you get registered and you got your bouncy thing and you got your this and your that and your diaper genie. And those are not the things that you should be thinking about. They're important.
They are. Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. Like the beginning of parenting starts off with a lot of stuff, right? It does start off with a lot of stuff because you have a newborn that you need to keep alive, basically, and all of those things at the very beginning. And it's intense. And parents are in this intensive state that is about a lot of stuff. And what happens is you're in this period of what I call like health and safety. And it's like insurance people are looking for, where are the risks, right? So your risk assessment. You're in a constant state of risk assessment, right? Is he cold? Is he hungry? Is he content? Does he need to be picked up? Does he need to be put down? Tummy time? All the things. So we're doing risk assessment all the time. And parents get into this mindset around their child being happy, which really isn't something. It's another piece of the work that I do with parents, because it's not about happy. Let's call it content, but parents at the beginning are just like, is he happy? Meaning he's not hungry, he's not tired, he's not overly hot, he's just in a good way. So in an evolutionary way, we're designed that way as parents. We're designed to come into parenting with this overdrive to keep the baby alive. That's just like a anthropological, biological, historical feature and function of parenting. And so that's like a 6-month period, let's put, right? So from 0 to 6 months, you're in this intensive needs assessment, risk assessment mindset. And so you build this habit of looking for risk, looking for problems, and looking to solve those problems. If they're hungry, I'm going to feed them. If they're tired, I'm going to get them to bed, right? And how long does it take to develop a habit, right? What do they say? 28
21
days,
days.
21 days, exactly like a month. So
Mhm.
now you've been doing this for 6 months.
Yeah.
And so the whole rest of parenting, this is why I love working with those brand new first-time parents and
Mhm.
help them transition into parenting. Everything after that 6-month period is an undoing of that mindset.
Yes.
And I want to say, people say letting go, but I also don't love the language of letting go because you're not. You're staying in connection with your child emotionally, but letting go of that control. Because for those 6 months, for those first few
You
months,
have to.
you
Yeah.
have to. That is
Yeah.
absolutely your role, is to be responsive to the physical and emotional needs of your child for their survival, for that
Yes.
baby. So it is 100% what you are tuned into. But a lot of parents don't get the message that after that
Stay there.
period that they need to start detaching from that control.
Mhm.
Because the only thing one of the most important things you are then meant to transition into is helping your child develop resilience. And the only way, and that would be another virtue or value that would
Yeah.
be on your chart of the
Mhm.
things you want. There's not a parent who would argue that they don't want their young adult to be
Yeah.
resilient.
Absolutely.
What does resiliency mean? It's the capacity to bounce back from adversity. Life is built with disappointment and adversity, and our
Yes.
capacity to be able to rise again is what resilience is. Every parent wants their adult child to be resilient. We
Absolutely.
reverse engineer that. And if you're going to control so much of your child's lived experience, you're actually interfering with their development of resilience.
That's right. Because they have to make those mistakes in order to build the resilience. They have to
Yeah.
have something to bounce back from.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
And that it takes practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the practice for the parent in that example is how to not insert yourself.
Mhm.
It's how to say less. So it'll be a lot of breath work, a lot of just breathing into the discomfort of wanting to save your child from this experience, from this
Mhm.
heartache, from this disappointment. It's a lot of you staying present in your body about how does it feel like
Yes.
I'm so uncomfortable that my child is in distress.
Yes.
And it's being emotionally responsive and empathetic with your child and having that compassionate state and helping your child develop their own self-compassion when something's hard.
Yeah.
To be able to sit with it being hard and say, oh, it's so hard when you weren't invited to the birthday party that everybody else was
Yeah.
invited to. That's really hard. I can see why that's so sad.
Mhm.
And being able to be with your child in that moment doesn't mean you just stay there and wallow in that sadness.
No.
But emotions are meant to be moved through and they have an arc, right? I always say the
Mhm.
emotion has to come to a completion.
Yes.
So they can be sad about something and you join them and see them in that sadness and you help them understand why they're feeling that way. Because the other piece of your role as a parent is to help make sense of the world for your child.
Yes.
Help the child make sense of themselves in the world and help them make sense of the world. So when you can see them in their sadness and say, I can see it, and it makes a lot of sense that you're so disappointed about this. I get it.
Mhm.
And I'll sit beside, do you want me to sit beside you while you're sad? Do you want me to hold your hand until you're not,
Yeah.
until you feel better? So you're staying with them. You're not solving it. There is no problem to solve.
That's right.
Parents feel it like my child is sad and that's the problem and I need
I
to
wanna
solve it
fix
to
it.
get them back
Yeah.
to happy.
Mhm.
But that's not your role.
No.
And that's what's hard for parents. That's the piece of the coaching where parents are like, what am I supposed to do to get my kid to? That's
Yeah.
always it, right? Fill in the blank.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. I need
And
my
usually it's
kiddo.
let's talk about what it feels like for you when your child is having that experience. And let's talk about what we can do to help you experience that differently.
That's right. It's that change of perspective and that knowing that it's okay to feel these emotions, right?
Yeah.
And let them come to completion. And emotions are energy in motion. They have to, and it's important. I used to tell my kids when they were little, about how I almost personified the emotion, some of the big ones, right? Because I wanted them to understand that it's not part of who they are, it's something that is flowing through them and will dissipate, right? That because you hear so many people say, I have anxiety,
Right.
I am depressed. It's, dude, again, that's a language thing, right? So
Yes.
if you really think about it, no, this is an emotion you have and it has to flow through. And I'm so glad that today's day and age, we're having more and more conversations about this
Yes.
in the mental health space. But I think there needs to be even more support for families with young children, and it's just more support is necessary.
Absolutely. And that's why no matter what I was doing when I went from education to counseling to becoming a psychotherapist, I'm always going to be working with parents. That's where my
Yeah.
heart is. That parents
Yeah.
need that support around their
I
own
so do.
anxiety, their own sense of self-doubt, their confidence, their own resilience. Like they need
Yeah.
that support.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate your work you're doing, Sharyn. It's amazing. And I don't think we're going to get to our last question because I have some questions for you.
Okay.
And we'll talk anyway, you'll see. I know everybody's going to get a lot out of this conversation, especially every bit of it. The values, I can't wait to get those cards. I know I mentioned them 3 times, but I'm excited. Okay. So, what is your definition of a fulfilled life?
Ooh, you went to the deep
I
questions.
go to the deep question.
Yeah. So I think fulfillment to me is about experiences with the people that matter to you. I think that when I have felt fulfilled, it's never been about stuff. It's never been about acquisition.
Yeah.
If anything, it's been about letting things go. But it's mostly been fulfillment to me would be about experiences with the people who love me, people who I love.
Yeah.
People that I can sit and say, I just love your company. I can have fulfillment from just an energetic exchange with somebody where we've been in true connection.
Yes.
And I can feel that. And maybe we don't even do anything. I have some of the most fulfilling moments when my youngest, who is away at school, when she comes into town and I just want to be near her and she knows it. Like I'll say, I just want to sit with you and we can be doing our own thing. But I feel that sense of fulfillment when my relationships are purposeful and built on a foundation of connection.
Yes. I love that. I love that. That's what we all want as parents, right?
Yeah.
So you already know this because your kids are grown up, though. How do you know you did a good job raising your kids? What do you see
Oh my
now
gosh.
that they're grown ups?
So I happen to have raised 3 outstanding individuals. They just happen to be incredible humans. How do I know I've done a good job with them? First of all, because I've raised them in a way where we are highly communicative,
Yeah.
they'll tell me. They'll say, I went out to do this thing and I went out of my way. It's one of the things I raised my kids to do is go out of your way for
Yeah.
people. Go out
Yeah.
of your way for people.
Yeah.
And when they come back and say, yeah, so I went out of my way, I remembered that and that's what I did. That's when you see, oh my gosh, it's stuck. The things I modeled and the things I said and the ways that I've lived my life, when I hear my words coming out of their mouth when they're supporting their sibling,
Yeah.
it's seeing them in a rich, fulfilling life. It's seeing them as adults wanting to spend time with me. I think that's a really big one. I'm super close with my kids, again, raising them solo. So we're very close. They're close with each other and I'm close with them. That doesn't mean that we see each other every day. But when we interact, there's a level of knowing one another.
Yeah.
And they're willing to be vulnerable and we're willing to be vulnerable with each other. And I still make repairs with them. They still make repairs with me. That's how you know when you have set yourself up and you've practiced these things for 30 years of parenting, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's a practice, which means I still get triggered. My triggers still influence how I show up sometimes.
Yeah.
I still have to go back and explain when, say, my favorite repairs, that's how parents, there's never a There's no statute of limitations on repair, right? If
That's
something
true.
happened 2 weeks ago, I can call up one of my kids and say, I was thinking a lot about that conversation we had in the car. And I know that I feel now that I was impatient with you. And what I wished I would have done was just listen to you more.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
And then you pause and you let that land with your child. And even your adult child, whether they're 5 or 15 or 25,
Yep.
what they get from that moment is my parent thinks about me when I'm not here, right? They reflect on our conversation. So I matter and our relationship matters. And they're willing to have hard conversations or maybe vulnerable moments with me. And so I'm showing up in a way that models for them what healthy relationship looks like.
Absolutely.
And then I see them do that with other people as well. So that's how you know. You have to be in it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So we all have challenging times, Sharyn, and I want to share, and all the parents listening have those challenging times. So what is something you tell yourself when you're going through one of those challenging times?
You have to know what are your tools? What are your coping tools? And everybody has different ones. And it's another thing I work on with parents that I work with. What are the tools that work for you?
Yeah.
As a solo parent, one of the hardest things that people don't realize, people in coupled relationships, is that when you don't have the other party to bounce things off of, when you don't have their child's dad, in my case, to bounce things off of, it can be a very lonely experience. And I don't like when I hear people say, go find your tribe, go find your community. That's very hard. And especially hard when you're on your own. And it can be a host of reasons why it's hard. But find one person. So one of my go-to strategies is called call a friend, right?
Yeah.
So I have one friend in my circle who knows she's my co-parent.
Yeah.
That's been her role for 30 years. She knows.
Awesome.
Yes, she knows that's her role. And I'll call her. She's known me the longest. She's known my kids the longest. And so she plays that role in my life.
Yeah.
But that's one of my tools. The other one is it depends who you are. Sometimes you go out in nature. Nature helps for me. Journaling helps for me. Sometimes taking a shower helps for me. Some people say 1% change or a 10% change, whatever you feel is small.
Yeah.
So what can you do in this moment of hardship that's going to alleviate a small percentage of the struggle that you're experiencing?
Yeah. Make you feel this much better.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just making a coffee. It depends on you and it depends on the struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. They're all different.
But you have to know how to tune into yourself. And again, you're going to practice what feels good.
Yeah.
What feels good and reflect on that. For me, taking a shower is such an easy one. There's something about taking a shower that just can shift me again, that 1%, 5%, just enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. To have that different perspective on the situation, right? I love that. So what is the most important thing you want people to take away from our discussion today? And there's so many important things, and I know, and you're allowed to say more than one, because some of my guests go, look, I have 2 things. I'm like, no, yeah, no problem, right?
Yeah.
The shout from the rooftop that's what I want my guests to get their message of the rooftop shouting.
Yeah. I think in priority order, I think it would be that parent coaching is available, that it is there for you, that just like we need to find the practitioners in our life that matter. Some people, you have a physician or a naturopath or a chiropractor, and these people that you go to tweak things or support you, that parent coaching is in that realm.
Yes.
That it's available to you. And that just like with those other practitioners, you have to find the person that matches you. You have to find the one that feels good to you.
Exactly.
So look for them because they're available and it's a support to you. It doesn't mean that have a problem being a parent. It just means that you're not signing up to struggle on your own and like duct tape together the answers to your questions. That getting support is responsible parenting.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much, Sharyn. So finally, where can people find you?
So
Where's
my
the
website,
best place?
Yeah, parentwellness.ca. So Parent Wellness is my website, and you can find me, Sharyn Feldman, on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And I'm working on a beta program, a group coaching program. It's in the pre-beta stage right now.
Okay.
But on my website, there's a sign up to be on a list for mindfulness, free mindfulness sessions that I hold online.
Yeah.
So get yourself on that list so that you can be on the list of people that get the first shout out when my
Yeah.
group coaching is available, because I want to support as many people as possible.
I know, right? That's
Yeah.
same. So thank you so much for being here, Miss Sharyn.
Thank you
We'll
so
have
much, Natalie.
all the links in the description, and we'll see you on the next one, guys. Bye. So glad you're still here. You do not suck as a parent. But I want you to know about something that we've created. The coaches and the experts that you see in this show, we've gotten together and we've created a community. It's called the Powerful Parenting Collective, where you as a parent can enter our group and have access to many of the experts that you see on the show, to private message them, to have a quick little video chat before you decide to hire them to help you in your parenting journey. Or maybe you decide not to do that. I want you to think about a community that is supportive, that will have events for you, free workshops, free information, and a place where you can really connect with the different experts that you've seen on this show. So click the link below and join us. Basically, think of it like a shopping mall for parents. We hope to see you there.